and then you can go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for joining our virtual town hall for Belle, Glade, South Bay, Pahokee, and Canal Point communities. This meeting is being hosted by our Glades Regional Office on behalf of our school district of Palm Beach County and Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy. Please note, we are recording this meeting so those who cannot attend can watch it at a later date and time. I am Angela Moore, and I proudly serve as the Glades Region Superintendent. I would also like to acknowledge members of our Glades Regional Instructional Team, Dr. Monique McTier, Instructional Superintendent, Mrs. LaWanda Harper, Ms. Maricel DeLeon, Mrs. Sasha Hare, Ms. Claudette Joseph, Mrs. Nicole Mangaroo, Mr. Adrian Dardell, Dr. Diana Romlaw, and Mrs. Amy Brown. Members of our Glades Region team who will be assisting us tonight are Mrs. Latangela McCauley Lewis, Mr. Kevin Wright, Ms. Mangaroo, and Mr. Dardell. I would also like to recognize members of our Tri-Cities Education Committee who continue to support us and have been supporting all of our schools since 2008. Those members are Ms. Mary O. Evans, Chair, Mr. Eddie Rhodes, Co-Chair, Mayor Steve Wilson, City of Belle Glade, Mayor Keith Babs, City of Pahokee, Mayor Joe Kiles, City of South Bay, Commissioner and Vice Mayor Ms. Clara Mervin, and former Commissioner and Founder Ms. Allie Biggs. On behalf of the Glades Region, we thank you for your continued support. I also want to recognize our principals, teachers, and staff of the Glades Region for working tirelessly to ensure the academic needs of our students are being met. Thank you. The work that you do does not go unnoticed. And finally, we have someone who has been a champion for our schools and community for over 10 years. She is our District 6 board member, Mrs. Marsha Andrews, who's going to bring greetings at this time.
Good evening, everyone. My Tri-Cities community, Belle Glade, South Bay, Pahokee, Canal Point. We love you so much. This evening is strictly for you. It's to have your questions answered. We have been in a challenging time, so this evening your questions will be addressed. We know that you have worked hard with our community, our children, our parents, to make sure that everyone was safe and healthy. As we began to open schools and think about what we're going to do, we can't do any of those things without your input. So as we answer these questions, it's a fluid situation. Every day is a new challenge for us, but we can do this together. I want to thank our teachers, our principals, our students, our staff, the region office. Everybody's just been working tirelessly to make sure that we could meet the needs of the academic achievement and mental health for all of our children. So sit back tonight, your questions will be answered. We want to hear your voice throughout this process as we begin to contemplate how we will open our schools to make sure our students are healthy and safe and can learn with a successful surrounding so that they can know that we're all working together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Andrews, for your words of encouragement, and we appreciate everything that you do for our Glades Region schools. We welcome you again to the last town hall in our series of meetings this week. This gives you, our stakeholders, another opportunity to hear district updates and district responses to questions you've submitted to our area offices, as well to offices outside of our region. And we want to make sure that we continue to prepare for the reopening of schools. The purpose of tonight's town hall is to share information with the community by highlighting the ongoing work and review proposed reopening plans for the 2021 school year. These town halls were organized by city, region, or language to better address the unique needs of our communities. Over 2,000 residents participated in the town halls on Monday and Tuesday, and town halls are also meant to complement the ways our district has collected feedback from various community groups, such as our parents and our employees. Events are open to all community members, but town halls are also being recorded to ensure individuals who cannot attend can still access the information being covered at a later date. In tonight's town hall, we will spend our time sharing ongoing work in the district, as well as reviewing initial reopening options. Please note that our preparation work for the new normal at school centers is quickly evolving based on the latest information provided by the CDC, the Department of Education, our Florida Department of Health, and our district's Health Advisory Committee. Also, community members were encouraged to submit questions in advance of this meeting. We would like to thank you for participating and asking great questions and also providing additional input. Between all of our regions, we received over 400 questions, and tonight we will be answering questions that were specifically sent to our Glades region. During the first half of this town hall, we will highlight district-wide efforts that have been ongoing since schools closed in mid-March due to COVID-19. This includes work related to summer learning opportunities, professional development and supports, and addressing internet access. The summer learning opportunities provided by our district are virtual. Students with individual education plans or IEPs are being offered the opportunity to continue their learning this summer. Approximately 6,500 students are currently enrolled and participating in virtual learning 4 days a week. Our talented teachers are also offering credit and course recovery for our middle and our high school students, as well as enrichment programs for our English language learners and migrant students. We are also offering a targeted intervention program for select students. Each elementary school in our region was allocated teachers to work virtually with students that are below grade level in small groups, targeting specific deficiencies in literacy and in math. And as a district, we allocated over $1 million to our schools to provide this great opportunity for students to catch up for missed instruction, especially for students who are significantly behind. In addition, all students have the option to take part in self-paced virtual activities outlined as part of our Summer Learning Essentials website, which was launched earlier this month. I remember reading on Facebook maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Ms. Tammy Jackson Moore, who's one of our fondest and most staunch supporters of the schools in our region, and also an advocate for our community, our Glades region community. And she wanted to know how she could support her granddaughter during the summer to make sure that she was ready for the next grade level. And so, Ms. Jackson Moore, I hope you had an opportunity to visit our Summer Learning Essential website. These activities that are on the website provide an additional opportunity for your granddaughter and other students in our region throughout this district to sharpen their skills or master standards in preparation for the next grade level. Activities include virtual field trips and other interactive opportunities to keep learning alive during the summer months. And so I know that you really want to make sure that your granddaughter is on track for school when we open in the fall, and however that looks. And so I know that you're taking advantage of this, and we hope that other parents are doing the same. The district also recently approved summer leases for a small number of community-based organizations, such as the Boys and Girls Club. And currently in the Glades region, we have Rosenwald that's soon to be open this summer for our Boys and Girls students. We have the Old Grove site that's currently open. We have Canal Point that's open. And we also have Belle Glade L as a site that's open. We met yesterday with our Boys and Girls Club members, Mr. Cornett and his team, and we talked about the possible opening of Glade View and also Pioneer Park. And we know that right now they're planning to have those 2 sites at the Teen Center, the newly opened Teen Center in Belle Glade. Here is a screenshot of our Summer Learning Essentials website. So again, if you haven't had an opportunity to visit this website, you can click on the top where it says Summer Learning Essentials. You will be able to access virtual libraries, virtual learning experiences, and field trips, as well as targeted intervention resources by grade level and subject area. And the address is listed on the bottom of the slide, but you can also tour the homepage at www.palmbeachschools.org to access resources that support continuous learning over the summer. So there's no excuse for our students and parents. If you're looking for something for your student to do during the summer, we have all of the information that you need right here on this website. So we hope you're taking advantage of this opportunity. The district has also offered numerous professional development opportunities and support for students and staff in response to COVID-19. Schools and regional offices received ongoing feedback regarding distance learning during school closures. And so parents, we want you to know that we heard you. And even some of the emails that we received in all of our region offices, we had parents and we also had teachers who were concerned about how this distance learning would look, having to teach their own children as well as teaching the students that they teach. And so we want you to know that we did hear you, and we also put some things in place through professional development to make sure that we were addressing this. For teachers to grow and to calibrate this summer, including topics such as effective distance learning, also reaching unengaged students, and then also making sure that we put those CDC protocols in place to make sure that if we were to return to a brick and mortar, that all of our teachers and staff have been trained as such. Mental health supports for students are also ongoing despite school closures, using telehealth services, which is the phone and online. And I know for myself personally, last week I had an opportunity to visit the doctor using, it seemed like FaceTime. And so we know that this is the direction that, everyone is going in now. And so we want to make sure that you know that we as a district will continue to provide these services to our students and to our staff as well if it's needed. Our district also hosted 2 summer institutes recently that were open to all members of the community. And we had over 4,500 people who participated in these summer institutes. And what we want you to know is that this year, those institutes were done virtually, but these are institutes that we have every year. So we do want you to take advantage of this opportunity as we continue to learn and grow from each other. It's important to note that the digital divide goes beyond distance learning and education. Without internet access, households are also limited in the ways they can interact with their healthcare professionals, government officials, and communities. And as I shared with you before, I had an opportunity to meet with my daughter's doctor, and we did it through a FaceTime-like mechanism. And so we know that these things are possible. When the district transitioned to distance learning in mid-March, in response to the pandemic, we knew not every student will have access to a stable internet connection. And we want you to know that we were concerned about this from the start. As the Glades region, and we know this happened throughout our district, but I want to focus on our Glades region right now. We know that the principals and our teachers went out of their way to make sure that their students were still being supported, made sure that their students were still being educated. We had principals and teachers who were making copies of packets that they were mailing home to students. We had teachers who were using their own personal phones to make sure that they were communicating with their students and their parents, and also making sure that students had an opportunity to send their work, to text their work to their teachers. We also had teachers and principals who were meeting their parents and families in the parking lot of our local grocery stores to make sure that we can get these resources to our students. And so I want to say to our principals and our teachers and our staff once again that I commend you for the work that you've done to make sure that our students were being educated. We appreciate you, and we appreciate all that our Glades region staff have been doing to make sure that we were providing our students with the support that they needed. But we also know that there were challenges. And as I mentioned before, some of our students didn't have access to the internet. And we know that some of our students didn't have their own individual Chromebook that they could use. And so we know that that was a challenge. And we made sure that when we reflected on how we started in March, we made sure that we had conversations about that. And we were able to come up with some solutions that we hope will help some of our students and our families in our Glades region community. The district has made a conscious decision to use the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to bridge the digital divide in Palm Beach County. Our mission is to grant all residents, regardless of zip code, access to reliable internet service in our neighborhoods. And although we know that this is a big challenge, our solution relies heavily on the involvement of our public and our private partners. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been fortunate to sit on meetings for the last couple of Fridays with Dr. Miller and Mr. Howard, Mr. Oswald, and we were able to have conversations with some of our partners, our business partners, and our community-based partners about what we can do to make sure that we close the digital divide gap for our students. And I want to take this time to thank some of those philanthropic organizations that have committed their dollars to help us to do just that. Quantum Foundation, United Way of Palm Beach County, and also the Town of Palm Beach United Way are just a few of those organizations that have been supporting us. And we want you to know that we appreciate you for taking the time out and for giving your dollars to the Glades Region Inclusion Project. We received those hotspot devices today. And let me tell you, Mrs. Andrews is so excited. We had an opportunity to share that information with her and our Tri-Cities Education Chair, Ms. Evans, so that they could see that we are working together to make sure that our students have the resources that they need so that they can be successful. Palm Beach County has also set aside $10 million of Federal CARES Act funding for what the county is calling digital inclusion projects. The $10 million allocated by the Palm Beach County Commission and will go towards things like the build-out of infrastructure in coverage areas prioritized in partnership with the county and the school district. We know that this project is happening right now in our Glades region, and they hope to have this complete by December. Pole attachment agreements with FPNL and covering one-time and recurring costs for our families. Those strategies that we hope to use are short-term. Some of those strategies are short-term. We have some that are long-term as well. And this will allow us to make sure that we're connecting our families in Palm Beach County. And as I mentioned before, those hotspots, we got those hotspots delivered today. There were 441 of them delivered today. We're expecting more. And we're going to start using the information that the principals have shared with us. So we, again, thank you, principals, for the documentation that you've been keeping. But using the information that the principals have shared with us, we're going to be organizing these hotspots, and we're going to be contacting parents next week so we can arrange a time for you to pick up the hotspots, especially for our students who are involved in those summer programs, to make sure that we can get them set up and get them involved and engaged right away. The long-term strategies are those Wi-Fi extenders. And so we know that this is going to take some funding, additional funding from internet sponsorships and partnerships with our municipalities. But I think that some of our business partners and some of our community organizations have shown that we can do this for the betterment of our students. And again, we applaud your efforts and we appreciate you for that. Reimagining schools. Now, we're getting ready to transition to the district's initial options for reopening, and we were going to use this time to, during tonight's town hall, to review those initial plans shared with our school board on June 10th. So you should see a January to March timeline. And so, you know, just for context, we want you to know that the district began monitoring and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic as early as January 20. So for those of us who have been watching the news, we started seeing a lot of this information come around December and then in January. And so we applaud our district for paying attention to this information and also monitoring. And then the district closed schools in mid-March per the guidance of our Florida Department of Education and the state of Florida. These events were similar to what we saw happening across the entire United States and the world. And so we weren't alone in making this decision to close our schools, but we just want you to know that we have been monitoring this since it started. And when we look at our April to June timeline, we know that the district is currently reimagining the reopening of schools based on the feedback that we've collected from those parent surveys that closed last week, and also those employee surveys that just closed this week. Also with the virtual town halls, and again, those emails that you sent to our region offices, we're going to be going through all of that information and sharing those and the recommendations. And even for those of you who had an opportunity to speak, even though it was pre-recorded, and share that information, your feedback with the board meetings. We want you to know that we're taking all of that feedback so that we can make the best decision for our students and our employees. Also, listening to our health experts is very important, and the guidance from the State of Florida Department of Education. I want to also take a moment to flag upcoming dates where the community can learn more about those finalized plans. If you notice at the bottom of this slide, we have our board public workshop on survey results happening on July 1st. Reopening task force shares options on July 8th, and then the final decision is going to be communicated to our parents and our stakeholders on July 15th. The reopening task force purpose, as I mentioned before, our superintendent, Dr. Fenoy, he created a reopening task force. So you probably heard us talking about a reopening task force, or RTF, and this decision was made around reopening the schools for the FY 2021 school year. And it's comprised of key district staff, including principals and assistant principals, teachers, members of our operations team and human resources, just to name a few. And the RTF proposes considerations, implications, and possibilities for reopening options to the superintendent, his executive team, and the school board. Some of those options include an emphasis on the safety and security of all students and staff. We want you to know that we heard you. Again, a lot of the responses that we are getting are centered around the safety of our students and our staff. Also, prioritizing an equitable environment for all students, ensuring high quality instruction and adaptability for sudden closures. And it's important to note that the superintendent also created a health advisory committee, since the expertise of our local health officials is absolutely critical during the decision-making process. Some of the instructional options that are being proposed are a full-time return to face-to-face instruction at school campuses. So this is what we know. This is what we're used to, students being on campus like they have in the past. A blended model, which combines face-to-face instruction and distance learning, and then distance learning exclusively. To wrap up the conversation on reopening school options, we wanted to make sure that we share 2 quick videos on the district's ongoing efforts to keep students and staff safe during these challenging times. The first video shows the work being done at the school centers to prepare for reopening, and the second video that you're going to see focuses on the school buses and keeping them clean and disinfected. So as the last video said, we're doing our part to make sure that we keep all of our students and staff safe. And hopefully those videos reflected just that. We also want you to know, before we get to our question and answering period, that we do have our summer feeding sites that have been operable since we went into this distance learning platform. And so far, we've served over 3 million meals since mid-March. And there are currently 52 locations across Palm Beach County. And in the Glades region, we have Rosenwald Elementary, Gove Elementary, Glade View Elementary, Belle Glade Elementary, and also Pahokee Elementary. And so we do want to, I know Mrs. Andrews is on here, but we do want to thank her for advocating for more sites to be open. And we also want you to know that the distribution takes place from 9 until 12 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we also have, or you can also visit our web page that's dedicated to summer feeding information and more. And we also have business partners who have also provided additional feeding sites throughout our community. Community members were encouraged, as I mentioned before, to submit your questions, and we will now answer some of those pre-submitted questions as time permits. But before we get to those questions, and we have members of our staff who are now coming on board to ask those questions, just want to remind you that we received hundreds of questions in anticipation of our town hall meeting, and we organized those into larger themes in the interest of time. And so please note that all of this feedback will be passed on to our reopening task force. It is also important to bring attention to the fact that the answers shared during tonight's town hall are based on the information according to what we know today. Things change rapidly. We heard Mrs. Andrews say that things are fluid, and so we want to make sure that we're giving you the most current information that we have at the time. But just know that things are changing, which means that we expect the situation to remain fluid for the foreseeable future. And the last thing I want to share on this topic is that there may be some reopening options the district cannot operationalize due to constraints related to budget or staffing needs. And for example, we may not be able to run multiple routes on school buses throughout a given day to accommodate social distancing guidelines. Doing so could prove to be both cost prohibitive, and the district is expected to have limited resources due to expected budget cuts caused by the COVID-19 economic crisis. So one of our first themes, and this was the one that was mostly asked, and it was centered around the health-related data, or how current COVID-19 data is being used to inform district decision-making. As I said before, the superintendent created a health advisory committee composed of local and state medical health professionals to provide feedback on best practices related to CDC guidelines. Their expertise will guide final decisions related to the reopening of schools. Theme 2 was around the recent parent-guardian survey on reopening schools that the school district conducted. And the feedback that we collected from these surveys will be used to inform decisions. And again, we want to let you know that we're going to be sharing the results of those surveys at the board workshop on July 1st. Theme 3 was related to distance learning and any anticipated changes for the 2021 school year. And as we mentioned before, we've set up professional development for our teachers and our staff. And we also want you to know that Dr. Sheffield and the academic team are working to diligently produce high quality instruction, the materials that teachers can use for distance learning purposes. And having these materials will help to standardize student learning experiences as much as possible. And the last theme was centered around the start of the school year. So as of right now, school is still going to start on August 10th. We don't have any new updates for that as of this time. So at this time, we will respond to those specific questions that were previously submitted to the Glades Region office. And I'm going to have members of our Glades Region team who are going to be sharing some of those questions with us. And I'm going to do my best to respond to those questions so that we can keep you as up to date as we can on things that are happening in our region.
Mrs. Moore, your first two questions are from Colleen Wallace. First question, allowances will be made for high-risk students to have a choice in the method of their instructional delivery. Will the same consideration be given to educators? Second question, employees are required to wear masks, but students are not. Palm Beach County is working on a mandate to require masks in public, as well as continued social distancing and no large gatherings. Are schools exempt from this?
Well, I first want to thank you, Ms. Wallace, for submitting your questions to our region. What I can tell you is that our district leaders are working with the CTA and other bargaining units to make sure that we're making the best decisions for our teachers and for our staff. And we know that some of our employees have pre-existing conditions and illnesses that may put them at high risk. So we do understand that, and we appreciate you for bringing that question forward. I can assure you that those things are being considered. And as we continue to work with CTA and those other bargaining units, we want you to know that the safety of our district employees is just as important as the safety of our students. Also, I think you asked a question about wearing masks. And yes, we know that Palm Beach County commissioners recently implemented a mandate for wearing masks in public places. And there also are some exemptions to that. But as far as the school district, we have not made any final decisions regarding the wearing of masks.
Mrs. Moore, this question comes from Ms. Brooke Friedman, who is a parent and educator. She submitted several questions. Will parents be required to sign a form every morning? Will teachers and staff members be provided with PPE masks? Who is going to clean and sanitize the school? We don't have enough manpower pre-COVID. With potential budget cuts, who is going to clean it now? Thank you for your time. I sincerely hope you take into account the well-being of all of your teachers, students, and staff. No amount of money can cure or bring back a loved one.
Okay, Mr. Wright, can you repeat the part you said something about a form or something?
The question proposed is, will parents be required to sign a form every morning?
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you, Ms. Brooke Freeman. I think Mr. Rice said that you were a parent and an educator, so I definitely want to thank you for the work that you did for our students during this COVID-19 shutdown. Yes, we are currently following CDC guidelines and the recommendations of our district's health advisory committee. As I shared with you earlier, this is a group that Dr. Fenoy has put together, and we're definitely making decisions based on the feedback that we're getting from them. All of your questions, you mentioned something about signing a form every morning, which is a great question. And this is definitely something that we're going to share with the reopening task force. And the mandating of masks and teachers and staff provided PPE, all of those things I know are being discussed and will be considered. As far as cleaning the schools, I hope that the video that we shared, I know it's just a snippet of, just a small 30-second snippet of the work that's happening in our schools, but I want to reassure you that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that our schools are clean and our buses are clean, and that we continue to follow those CDC protocols to ensure that the schools are being sanitized as much as possible. And then the last thing I think that I heard you say is that no amount of money can cure or bring back a loved one. And I'm so glad that you said that, because in the midst of all of this, we have to remember what's most important. And so that's why we're taking this very serious, the information that we're getting from the CDC and also that health advisory committee, to make sure that we're making the best decision for our teachers and our staff, as well as our students.
This question is from Zipporah Richmond. Hi, I definitely understand that safety is a huge concern for our students. However, I am a parent and a teacher. I need to work to support my family. My biggest challenge during the distance learning was trying to teach my students while having all of my children home who need my help as well. If a blended model or distance learning model is adopted, are there any ways that you can address the needs of working parents and how they will manage to maintain jobs? This is a huge concern for me, and I would like to see some kind of options that can support that. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Ms. Richmond, for the work that you did as a teacher and a parent at Whispering Pines Elementary. So we definitely appreciate you for that. But listen, I too am a parent of a high school 10th grade student who's going to 11th grade. And I also was responsible for doing the work that I do in the district. So I understand, trust me, we all did it. And we have been having conversations around that, because we know it was difficult for you to teach your students and then also to teach your class. So we know that that was a challenge for all. for all of our working parents, so especially our teachers who are trying to teach their students as well. So I would say, yes, we are definitely taking these things into consideration. And again, as we continue to move from now these virtual town hall meetings, and we've gotten this feedback from all of you, we're going to share this information with our reopening task force to make sure that those things are considered so that we can once again make the best decisions for all.
You have Kelly Donovan, a teacher who has 2 questions for you, Mrs. Moore. First question, will teachers be allowed to wear face shields in the classroom as opposed to face masks? I'm thinking that shields will be more beneficial since it will allow my students to see my mouth while I'm teaching. Second question, if the hybrid model is chosen and I'm required to teach on campus 5 days a week, will my school-age child be allowed to remain with me in my classroom on his virtual learning days? Childcare is a major concern for me if my child is not in school full-time.
Yes, Ms. Donovan, again, thank you for the work that you've done as a teacher. We really appreciate it. Believe it or not, Ms. Donovan, we had this conversation yesterday on a meeting with Dr. Fenoy. He actually brought it up about the face shield and exactly to your point about students needing to see your mouth as you're teaching. And so I know that this is something that is being discussed and that is being shared with the reopening of schools task force. But I just want to remind you that we have not made any decisions regarding masks or shields at this time. But those things are being considered. And once we get a final decision, of course, that will be shared with all of you. As far as the childcare, we know that has been a challenge for a lot of our parents. We've heard this from parents who have voiced their concerns at board meetings and also through a lot of the emails that we received through across the regions. And so we do know that's a major concern, and especially for our teachers. Again, we heard from some of the other teachers. We shared their email comments already, and so we know that that's a concern. But again, those things are being shared with the reopening task force, and we want to make sure. And then we're also making sure that we're working with the CTA and the other bargaining units to make sure that, again, your voices are being heard so that they can be included in this decision-making process.
The next question comes from Jennifer Mays, who is a teacher in our region. I am a teacher in the Glades, but have kids and a nephew at the Wellington schools. If we go back to school part-time, can my kids and nephew be on the same schedule as me so that I can be home to take care of them when they are not in school?
So first, I want to say thank you, Ms. Mays, for the work that you've been doing in our Glades region as a pre-K teacher at Belle Glade Elementary. We really do appreciate all of the work that you've done. You're a phenomenal teacher. As I hear the question that, Mr. Wright has posed, and when you bring up a schedule, I think it's going to be important for me to reach out to you so that I can get a little bit of clarity on exactly how that would look and exactly what you're asking for. And so just expect an email from me tomorrow. And then you can kind of share that. And if we need to talk over the phone, we can do that so I can have a better understanding of what you're asking so that I can share that information with the reopening task force. I do understand the part that you're saying as a teacher, you're responsible for your students, but I also know how much you care about your children and also your nephew. And so we want to make sure that the question that you're asking, I get it right so that I can share that information with the reopening task force. So I'll be sending you an email tomorrow.
The next question comes from Lee Woodham, director of the Dollyhan Cultural Arts Center. My question is about field trips. Do you think students will be allowed to go to the Dollyhan after January 1st? Also, what about artists being able to go into schools to work with classrooms and or to do performances for assemblies? Also, has there been any discussion about what testing might look like next year?
Thank you, Ms. Woodham, for your support of our schools, your continued support of our schools, and the field trips that you've established at the Dollyhan and the opportunities that it provides to our students to learn more. So thank you. As far as the testing, I'm not sure if you're referring to state assessments. We know that the Florida Department of Education has released the new FY21 school accountability. So we know that that has been released, even though it hasn't been officially approved yet. We know we have an idea of how that looks. So if that's the testing that you're referring to, then we kind of have an idea of how that looks moving forward. And I can follow up with you to discuss that. But as far as students being allowed to go to the Dolly Hand at the start of in January, and also having guests to come on school campuses, I think it's too early for us to make a decision about that. Everything is contingent on what happens with this virus. And as you know, we've seen an uptick in cases in our Glades region. And so, as far as right now, we're still operating the way that we are. We don't have students outside of those few camps that exist with a lot of people on campus. And so we're not arranging for any of our students to go anywhere else, but I will definitely keep you up to date. You know how to reach me. We've talked on the phone before as well as emailed, so I'll definitely follow back up with you regarding that.
Our next questions come from one of our teachers, Carla Little Griffiths. She starts off with asking, how do you plan on monitoring the students between classes? There has been so much discussion about keeping students safe. What are the plans to help keep teachers safe? What measures will be taken, if any, especially for educators with pre-existing conditions that put them at high risk? Following the current CDC recommended guidelines, what additional precautions or safety guidelines are you establishing for the Glades area, since recently we have been identified as a hotspot? For example, how will this look if the district decides to go with a traditional school setting? Will teachers with high-risk factors be given the opportunity to transfer to somewhere else, or will they have to choose between keeping their jobs, income, supporting their families, or endangering their health? The Glades region is a very outstanding yet unique area, which in my personal opinion will require a very unique reopening plan.
Hello, Ms. Little Griffiths. Thank you for the work that you're doing in our schools at Glades Central, and we're definitely happy to have you back in our Glades region. And also thank you for the questions. There's a lot to unpack with this, but I will agree that our Glades region is a very outstanding region, and it's also a unique region, and especially at this time when we've seen an uptick in those COVID-19 cases. And so I know that the local mayors, they actually had a town hall meeting before this meeting, have been working behind the scenes to talk about things as it relates to the city of Belle Glade. But as of right now with our schools, all of our schools are kind of under the same the guidance as far as following the CDC guidelines, and also the district's health advisory committee, and working with our reopening task force, and to make sure that we're, again, making sure that our students are going to be safe, but also those teachers, and as you mentioned, with those pre-existing conditions, that they're going to be safe as well. And so, this continues to be a recurring question. It came up in our themes across all 4 of our regions, and it's a question that we've already responded to with some of the previous questions that we answered. And so we know that you, Ms. Little Griffith, and I think also Ms. Betty Pettihome, as we were going through the questions today, and many others share the same concern. And so we want to assure you that we're taking all of those things into consideration, for our Glades region, and having conversations about the uniqueness of our Glades region, especially with the uptick in cases. And so we're going to keep you posted. As I get new updates that I can share with you, I'll definitely do that. And so that we can continue to talk about ways that we can ensure that our students, our teachers, and our staff are going to be safe during this process. So thank you.
Mrs. Moore, the next 2 questions are similar, so we're going to ask the one question. If school reopens, can I choose to continue to do virtual learning? This comes from Ms. Torres and Ms. LaTorsha.
Ms. Torres and Ms. LaTorsha, thank you for your question. As of right now, and I hate that I can't give you a definitive answer right now, but I just need you to know and understand that, we're taking all of this information on July 1st. The results of the survey are going to be shared, but we're also making sure that we share these questions with our reopening task force. And we'll have a decision made by July 15th as far as the options for parents. And so, we hear you. We know that you want to know if you have the choice. We think that parent choice is important, but as of right now, we have not made a definitive answer, a decision as far as how the reopening of schools will look for FY 2021.
This question comes from Betty Pettyhome. I think we just kind of hinted at her. Will there be mandatory 14-day quarantine at home and retesting before coming back to school for students and staff? She also wants to know, can some school sites also have testing centers with trained medical staff?
So, Ms. Pettyhome, first of all, thank you for the work that you're doing at Pahokee Elementary. We appreciate everything that you do. And you posed some great questions about students being tested, mandatory quarantine, school sites being testing centers, and more. And so, a lot of what you've asked is being addressed and discussed. And those, we're taking the recommendations from the CDC. But I would definitely bring these questions to the reopening task force to make sure that it's considered, and also follow back up with you. Because we do want to make sure that the questions that you guys are submitting, that you do get a response, a personal response as well from us. And I also advise you to continue to watch the updates that are coming from our school district as we continue to move closer to the reopening of our schools.
So our next question comes from a parent, Josie Simmons. I have tuned into 2 separate town halls and still have not heard a clear answer to this question. If I do not want my child to return to brick and mortar at all, will remote learning be available through the school? Will the uptick of COVID-19 cases in Palm Beach County and the other surrounding counties, I do not feel confident at all. Could you please give me a clear answer to this? And I know you kind of alluded to it in some of your other answers, Mrs. Moore.
Yes, Ms. Simmons, thank you for this question. And just hearing Ms. Mangaroo read this question, I just feel, something about this question just makes me feel a little bit overwhelmed, because you're saying that you don't feel confident. We as educators and professionals, we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that our parents feel confident about what we do in Palm Beach County. So just know that this is something that keeps coming up. Again, I'm a mother of a child who is in 10th grade, so I have some of the same concerns, and as well as a whole lot of the other district leaders in our county. And so we're continuing to pay attention to this uptick in those COVID cases. And, the only thing that I can say to you right now, because I don't have a definitive answer for you, is to continue to watch and monitor what the information that we're sharing through the board workshop that's happening on July 1st, on July 8th, and then that final decision that's being made on July 15th. And also, Ms. Josie Simmons, I want you to know that I'm going to personally reach out to you via your email so that I can possibly have a conversation with you, because again, as Mrs. Andrews stated earlier, we want you to know that your voices matter and we want to hear from you. And so we really appreciate these emails that you sent us so that we can have an opportunity to respond.
Mrs. Moore, Ms. Patricia Sasson submitted a comment. One of the largest science museums, New York Hall of Science, has announced it will remain closed until spring 2021 and will reopen when they can assure the safety of visitors and staff. As the school district of Palm Beach County evaluates the reopening of schools for the 2021 school year, I am hoping you are keeping in mind, as organizations such as NYSCI has, that the classroom and school environment is a high-touch environment for both academic learning and social interaction. Although I am not a fan of exclusive distance learning, virtual school, I do believe if we can't assure the safety of our children and the teachers and faculty who care for them in our schools, then face-to-face on campus or even hybrid part-time campus scheduling should not be considered.
Thank you, Ms. Sasson, for your comment. And we agree safety of our students and staff is the most important. And I can't remember which parent sent us that email about just making sure that our parents are safe, and we can't replace a loved one. And so we hear you. We thank you for your comment, and just please, again, follow us on our district website, school board meetings that are coming up starting July 1st, so that you can hear the direction that we're moving in as we continue to move forward. We have a few little bit of time to answer a few more questions, so we're going to try to get to as many more questions as we can.
This question comes from Adiva Henderson. How can the district ensure the safety of students and employees? If a person is asymptomatic, there is no way of knowing that if that person has COVID-19. Even if we did temperature checks on a daily basis, that would not guarantee the safety of students and employees. I'm an employee and a parent. I'm a high risk group. I am sole caretaker of my children and elderly parents, and a sibling with developmental disabilities. If I do not feel comfortable returning to a school campus until there is a vaccine available, what are my options for the reopening of school? Will my children have an option of doing online classes exclusively? And then she says, I know that many parents have returned to work and children is a major concern. And childcare is a major concern. Is it possible to continue distance learning for safety reasons while making children available for working parents, while making childcare available for working parents?
Okay, Ms. Adiva Henderson, thank you for the work that you're doing at Glade Central. We really do appreciate you for that. And you had a lot of questions that I feel like we kind of answered earlier on, especially as it relates to the pre-existing conditions of our employees. And so again, know that we're working with CTA and the other bargaining units, because again, we want to make sure that we're making the best decisions for not only our students, but for also our teachers and our staff. That's very important to us. And I got to keep going back to that parent who sent that email and said, we can't replace you. You can't replace a loved one. And so it's important. We're definitely taking this serious, and we just want to reassure you that we're going to do everything that we can to make the best decision to ensure that our students and our school staff continue to be safe. And Ms. Henderson, I'll reach out to you also so that I can make sure that I'll follow back up with you with your questions. We have time for a few more questions, and let's go.
The next question comes from Angel. Will there be sport activities such as football, cheer, band, etc.?
Let me just first say this to our seniors who played spring sports and they missed out on that opportunity to showcase their talent during the spring half of the year. We're sorry. It's nothing that we could do about it, but we know that talent is in your DNA in this great Glades region. You're fighters, and so we know that you'll still have opportunities because you're built for this. So let me just say that to you, and we applaud you and your parents. To our current students, we know that right now, if we were in a regular school year, the football would be doing their conditioning during the summer. And so we know that we're losing that opportunity, but we also know that our district manager of athletics is working closely with the Florida High School Athletic Association, and we're fortunate to have our very own board member, Mrs. Marsha Andrews, who also sits on that committee. And so I know that the information that she gets, she shares it with our district to make sure that we're staying on top of the most accurate information and making sure that we're continuing to follow the necessary protocols to keep our students safe. So we're going to make sure that as soon as we get information about athletics, we share that information with all of you. We have time for a few more questions.
Okay, so this question I'm going to consolidate. It's from two parents, one Alba and Laura, very similar. How are the students to receive their ESC, IEP, or any other special teaching? I feel like my child cannot get this from hybrid or virtual schooling.
Okay. We appreciate your feedback. And I think this was the first question we've had tonight regarding ESC specifically. And so we want you to know that we appreciate your feedback, Ms. Alba and Ms. Laura. And we want to assure you that we're doing everything that we can. And we're developing plans that address the needs of our students with disabilities and our exceptional education students. That's very important. Our Director of Exceptional Student Education and his team, and you heard me mention earlier, Ms. Amy Brown, who sits in our Glades region, all of them are working together. They're sharing information to make sure that, and sharing that information with our school-based contacts to make sure that we have the right support for our students. To continue to provide that individualized support for our students, and so we hear you, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that we're providing students with what they need so that they can be successful. We have time for one more question.
This last question comes from Richard. What will be the role of substitute teachers if schools reopen?
Richard, we thank you for your question. The role for substitute teachers right now would be the same. If we go into a regular traditional school setting next year, our substitute teachers have covered when a teacher was absent. So as far as I know, the role for our substitute teachers will be the same. If there's anything that changes, we'll make sure that we let you know. So we had to stop with the questions. We're 5 minutes away from the end of our town hall. Please know that we got through every question that was sent to our Glades region. So, but we will follow up with you. Those of you who we needed a little bit more clarity, we'll be emailing you tomorrow so that we can have a conversation with you about it. For those other questions, we know that all of the other regionals are planning to reach out to each one of you to answer your questions and to make sure that you know that your voices are heard. I want to thank Dr. Adam Miller and his entire EdTech team for the support that they gave us tonight. It's been great. And also some of our district professionals who helped us, Ms. Kathy and also Ms. Shea. Thank you, all of you, for the work that you did behind the scenes to make sure that this was a success. And just know that this is not the last opportunity for us to hear from you. We're going to continue to have these virtual town hall meetings and opportunities to hear from you throughout this entire process. And at this time, and I also want to thank my team who's here with me tonight to make sure that we were able to carry out this virtual town hall meeting without any issues. But at this time, I want to allow our very own District 6 board member to bring closing remarks to all of you. Again, on behalf of the Glades region, I say thank you, and never, never forget that greatness is in our DNA. Mrs. Andrews, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a wonderful, wonderful virtual town hall. And the questions were so appropriate and so in-depth to talk about what we're going to do. I loved it. I loved hearing from all of you tonight. And I need to keep hearing from you. Ms. Moore is on speed dial with me as well as the Tri-Cities. And when I heard all of the community tonight, it made me know that you are tuned in on it to know what has to happen for these schools to open. And as we look at our Glades region, we are different. We're unique. We are great. And we're going to make sure whatever opening we have for the Glades region, it's going to work because we will be listening to you. And you're going to tell us how to make it work so that it can work for our children. So what a wonderful evening as I sat here and listened. And I've been to numerous town halls this week, but I was really impressed tonight because you are keeping yourselves right to the nose of what has to happen for success for our children, our teachers, our staff, and our community for the Glades region. Thank you so much. And we're going to continue talking over this next month before school opens so that we can hit it right on the dot to make it a success for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews, for your continued support. Thank you for being on this town hall with us. And we definitely want to make sure that all of our stakeholders know that their voices are important. So thank you for reminding them of that. And on behalf of the Glades region, we say thank you for participating tonight. Have a great evening. Thank you.